Welcome to HardScript.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. I asked a birthday question and got a death sentence for our marriage. I said, "What do you want this year?" And she didn't look up from her phone. She smiled like a person who just solved a puzzle and said, "You disappear." No laugh, no wink, just a clean order. The coffee machine hissed behind her like applause. I didn't beg for context. Something in me went dark and quiet. Not love, just the part that keeps negotiating with a fire. I rinsed her untouched mug, dried the counter, and let the silence settle. It felt less like defeat and more like clarity, the way a room sounds after a party ends. Ava hadn't always been like this. We used to spend Saturdays picking tomatoes at the farmer's market, arguing about which scented candle smelled least like a hotel. Then came the ring light, the brand deals, the captions about choosing herself. The phone flipped face down when I walked in. She called it growth. It looked like rehearsals for an exit. I didn't storm out. I moved internally. I stopped offering warmth she could weaponize. I let her think she was winning the argument I never joined. Later she told her sister Claire, on speaker like I wasn't there, that I was being dramatic. Claire recommended therapy for my abandonment issues. My fork clicked once on the plate, and that was the whole reply. At work, Derek from HR asked why I looked rested for the first time in months. Because sleep arrives when you quit bargaining with a ghost. On lunch break, I opened a new account in my name only. That evening, the joint card failed on 3 of her subscriptions. No lecture, no scene, just a gentle error message that meant the ground had started to shift. A friend posted rooftop photos. For women, 2 neon cocktails, one hand on Ava's hip that wasn't hers. Half in frame, enough to do the math. I didn't zoom, didn't confront. Patterns don't need names to be true. I changed my gym time to 6 a.m., ran until my chest burned clean, then threw the spare key from under the grill into a sewer grate and listened for the small metallic goodbye. I boxed passports, titles, the deed copy, and put the box in a storage unit across town with a new code only my memory knew. She finally studied me like a problem set and said I'd gone quiet. She wanted the old debate so she could win it again. I gave her the dishwasher hum and a nod that meant nothing and everything. That night, I wrote a list on a yellow legal pad. Accounts, locks, storage, attorney, realtor. At the bottom, I wrote her present exactly as requested. Disappear. Not dramatic. Surgical. By the time her birthday candles were lit, the house would answer to my echo again, and she'd be the stranger blowing smoke into an empty room. I woke before sunrise and treated the list like a launch sequence. Paycheck redirect first. HR couldn't move fast, but the bank could. I set my deposits to the new account and left the old one starved on purpose. The shared card would stay alive long enough to look normal from a distance and useless up close. No lectures, just a quiet suffocation of access. At the gym, I ran until the belt smelled like hot rubber and silence settled into my bones. On the way home, I stopped by a UPS store and rented a mailbox with a number that wasn't a home. Paper would flow there now. Statements, legal mail, anything that could be intercepted by a curious hand. The clerk asked if I wanted a key copy. I said one was enough. Ava announced she had a brand shoot downtown and wouldn't be back till late. She said it like a dare, waiting for a performance I no longer put on. I nodded, wiped the kitchen island until it squeaked, and called an attorney whose office smelled like fresh toner and winning. He didn't ask moral questions. He asked asset questions. I answered with receipts and serial numbers. He told me to document everything and not to fight in the house. I told him there would be no fight. By noon, a contractor changed the code on the garage door. I watched his hands move like a magician's and said I needed it because a contractor lost the old code. That wasn't a lie. A man had lost it. He just lived here. I installed a small camera pointed at the safe, a black that only cared about dates and hands. Evidence is boring until it isn't. Claire called and filled the room with her voice, asking if I'd planned something special for the birthday. She said Ava deserved a weekend to remember. I told her she'd get one. Claire laughed in a way that said she thought I was finally learning to be romantic. I ended the call and boxed the framed photos, leaving the shadows on the walls like chalk outlines. Work stayed busy and useful. Derek pushed a compliance project my way. He said it would distract me. It did more than that. It reminded me I know how to audit a system until it has nowhere to hide. I applied that muscle to my marriage. Export data, find patterns, label risks. No tears, just trend lines. Near evening, my neighbor Tom texted a clip from his doorbell camera. Two figures on our porch at midnight last week. Ava and a man in a varsity jacket he was too old to wear. Tom wrote that he'd assumed the guy was family. I thanked him and archived the file where it would matter. I still didn't zoom. The point wasn't who, only what. She came home with expensive exhaustion and a shopping bag she claimed was gifted. She looked at the shelves and asked where our photos went. I said I was repainting the frames. She shrugged like it bored her. She asked if I'd made reservations for Saturday. I said the plan was already in motion. That night, while she scrolled in blue light, I drove across town to a storage unit with an elevator that groaned like an old ship. I slid in 3 boxes, documents, heirlooms, hard drives. When the door slammed, it sounded like a page turning. Tomorrow would be locks. The day after, a meeting with a realtor. By her birthday, I would give her exactly what she wanted. She just didn't know the gift included the silence afterward. 2 things landed the next morning. A florist's box with Ava's name on it, and an email from my attorney outlining 3 clean steps. Document, petition, notify. The flowers were from me, on purpose. 12 white roses with a simple card that read, "Saturday is taken care of." I wanted her focused on the gift wrap while I moved the vault. I called a moving service that specializes in corporate relocations, the kind that signs NDAs and loads quietly. I scheduled them for Saturday afternoon under a work order labeled staging. They'd take what was mine by receipt and serial number. Guitars, camera gear, my grandmother's cedar chest, the office safe. No arguments, just inventory. Before lunch, I met a realtor in a coffee shop where everyone wore headphones and nobody cared. She looked at comps and said the market liked clean exits. She was right. I told her I needed photographs ready by Sunday and a listing drafted without a timeline. She understood the dance. Keep options open, keep intentions hidden. Ava posted a story about pre-birthday bliss and tagged a rooftop I knew too well. She added a caption that said the universe was finally listening. It was, just not to her script. I saved the story and scrolled her comments like an auditor. Same emojis, same 2 usernames that show up every time she disappears after midnight. Work offered me cover. Jenna from compliance organized a happy hour for Friday and insisted I come. She said I needed to be seen. I agreed. Alibis are cleaner when they're casual. While people debated sports, I moved numbers on my phone. Utilities split, streaming logins reset, cloud drives mirrored to an external. When you back up your life, you learn how small it actually is. Tom, the neighbor, texted again. He asked if our porch camera had caught the guy in the varsity jacket. I told him the system was new and thanked him for looking out. He replied that he'd keep an eye on Saturday since he'd be home fixing a bike. Good. Witnesses like Tom don't perform, they record. Ava floated through the door near midnight wearing a smile that didn't reach her eyes and a perfume that wasn't on our shelves. She glanced at the flowers and said her friends were jealous. She asked if Saturday was formal. I told her the morning was. She nodded without asking why, already picturing the version of events that flattered her. Before bed, I set a single calendar invite to her phone. Title, Your Birthday, 9 a.m. Location, I left it blank on purpose. The alert would chime at 8 o'clock. By then, the first truck would be on our street, and the gift she requested would finally have weight. Friday carried that charged calm right before a storm. At 8, a locksmith swapped the front cylinders and reset the garage keypad. I told him a contractor misplaced the code. When he left, the deadbolt turned like it was answering to me alone. I gathered the old keys, dropped them in a drawer, and let the metal rest like retired soldiers. Ava drifted downstairs late, robe, coffee, performance face. A courier delivered a garment bag stamped with her name in gold foil. She staged it on a chair and filmed a soft unzipping for her followers. She asked if tomorrow required heels. I said the morning did. She smiled, already editing the story in her head. At lunch, my attorney slid a 1-page plan across a glass table. File Monday at 9, request temporary occupancy, freeze discretionary spend. He spoke about timelines. I spoke about proof. He said not to telegraph. I told him my favorite language was silence. The bank visit felt clinical. A manager opened a safe deposit box with the patience of someone who sees endings daily. I placed hard drives and originals inside, then walked out lighter. On the way home, I stopped at the UPS store and added a second key to the mailbox, only mine. Work gave me cover. Jenna organized a happy hour and insisted I show up. I did. While Derek told a story about college football, I confirmed the moving window, mirrored my cloud drives to an external, and scheduled utility splits. In the noise of a bar, logistics sound like laughter. Tom, my neighbor, texted that he'd be on his porch tomorrow fixing a bike around 9. He said he'd keep an eye out. Good. Tom documents, he doesn't dramatize. An unknown number buzzed. A photo of Ava outside that rooftop, a man's hand fitting her waist like muscle memory. No caption. I archived it with the rest. The Who kept asking to become the headline. I wouldn't give him the honor. She came home early with a shopping bag she called borrowed. She poured wine, left a lipstick print, and asked if a car was coming in the morning. I said yes. She asked if it was formal. I said morning formal, afternoon free. She laughed into her phone and told Claire she might cry. I ironed a jacket, polished shoes, checked the go bag under the back seat. At 8, her calendar chimed. Your birthday, 9 a.m. No location. She saw it and grinned like fate had RSVP'd. At 7:59 the next morning, a diesel engine whispered at the curb. A box truck shadowed the front windows. Upstairs, tissue paper rustled. She thought a party was arriving. Something was. I opened the door and let the day inside. At 8:59, I gave her exactly what she asked for. I disappeared, and I did it while the house learned my new silence. She stepped out in the gold-foiled dress, bright and sure of herself. We were on a clock, and we were. I drove her to a downtown hotel that sells quiet by the hour in a spa suite. The lobby smelled like eucalyptus and new carpet. The desk sealed her phone in a gray pouch to enhance relaxation and handed her a robe like a trophy. She told the attendant it felt cinematic. The attendant said birthdays deserved intention. I agreed with my eyes and was gone before the elevator closed. Outside, the truck idled at the curb. I texted the foreman a single word, go. He didn't need more. His crew rolled out floor runners, wrapped furniture in quilted pads, taped drawers, photographed cereal plates, and loaded what was mine by receipt and number. Guitars in hard cases, camera bodies in glass and foam, office safe already emptied, my grandmother's cedar chest under blankets, files in labeled banker's boxes. Tom sat on his porch, bike upside down in a stand, a witness with coffee and a clear view. He lifted 2 fingers when the first case crossed the threshold and returned to the derailleur. I stripped my closet to spine and left her side intact. Hangers clicked like ribs. I signed out of every home device, wiped my profiles from the TV, reset the Wi-Fi, changed the SSID, and removed my name from the router label like erasing chalk. Streaming logins decoupled. Cloud backups verified. Mail forwarding set to the private box. The USPS confirmation number lived where only I could see it. In the garage, I slid the updated insurance card into the glove box and laid the old plate into a padded envelope. The go bag moved behind the driver's seat where my hand would find it without thinking. The realtor confirmed Sunday 11 for photos. I approved the lockbox code that breathes for one day. My attorney's notice timed for Monday at 9 waited in drafts. Paper is emotional. Email is surgical. I left the appliances, her furniture, every shared item that could become an argument. Divide clean. Exit cleaner. At 11, I circled back to the hotel. The attendant said she was glowing and headed to a blowout appointment the gentleman booked. I nodded and left a plain envelope at the desk for checkout. An itemized list of what departed and the inventory numbers to match. No apology. No accusation. Just records. At 12:14, my phone lit with a live view from the smart lock. She stood at our door with a gift bag and a practiced smile, pressed the code she thought was eternal, and laughed at the beep. The lock blinked red, steady and final. A second figure slid into frame, the same varsity jacket from every blurry photo, reaching for a handle that no longer knew his hand. The lock blinked red, and I watched from a block away while the house learned my name again. She tried the code 3 times, then looked up at the camera with a smile I recognized from every apology she never finished. The man in the varsity jacket hovered behind her like a shadow, trying to become permanent. He said she should call a locksmith. She told him the door always opened for her. That version of me no longer existed. My phone stacked missed calls into a tidy column. I kept it on silent and let the log do the talking. A preset on the smart lock pushed a message to the doorbell screen. Property secured. No threat. No heat. Just a boundary that didn't bend. Tom stayed on his porch pretending to fix the bike and pretending not to hear her laugh flatten into something thinner. I drove to the storage unit, scanned the code, and walked the corridor that smelled like dust and cardboard. The cedar chest rested under quilts, my guitars stacked like sleeping animals, the safe sitting empty and smug. I took photos for the file and emailed my attorney. Inventory complete, occupancy request ready, Monday 9 o'clock confirmed. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji I didn't need to see. The subject line said enough. At noon, the hotel released her phone from its gray pouch. The messages hit like hail. She asked where I was. She said it wasn't funny. She said she'd call the police. The police liked facts, and I had them. Receipts, timelines, footage, a clean ledger. I didn't answer. Silence is not absence, it's management. I stopped by an apartment I'd rented month to month on a street with no memories. Keys, white walls, a mattress and a table, sunlight like a promise nobody can fake. I set the router, mounted a single frame with no photo in it yet, and opened a window. The quiet didn't feel empty, it felt earned. She posted a birthday story from our sidewalk, the door blinking behind her like a metronome. Her caption said the universe was testing her. The comments filled with concern and validation and strangers eager for a villain. I let them audition without me. By evening, Claire called from a number labeled emergency and left a message that sounded rehearsed. She said I was cruel and Ava was crying. The camera showed no tears, only calculation. Before dark, I scheduled 2 things, Sunday at 11 for realtor photos, Monday at 9 for the filing and formal notice. The envelope I'd left at the hotel would be the first paper in her hands. The second would come with a case number. She wanted a birthday wish. She got it. I didn't vanish into smoke. I stepped into air. Sunday started at the curb with coffee steam and a quiet house that finally answered to my key alone. I walked room to room, adjusting blinds, clearing counters, carrying out the last neutral items that could turn into negotiations later. The place looked honest, stripped of props. No slogans, no curated corners. Floors I had paid to refinish showed a grain that didn't lie. At 10:45, the realtor arrived with a gimbal and shoe covers, efficient and unfazed. She said the light was perfect. I said the timing was. She staged 2 chairs and a throw to suggest possibility, then captured clean angles of rooms that used to argue with me. The camera made everything factual. At 11, Claire appeared at the walkway holding helium balloons and a cupcake carrier. She stared past me, expecting faces to pop from doorways. She asked where everyone was. I didn't answer. The realtor did, with a voice trained for disclosures. She said we were prepping for listing photos. Claire's mouth closed around a truth she hadn't rehearsed. She called Ava and said this had to be a prank. Ava told her I was being theatrical. The empty walls disagreed. I handed Claire a thin envelope, printouts of public posts, timestamps, delivery logs, and the spa receipt with the phone pouch signature. No captions added, just her sister's words presented back to their owner. Claire read fast, slower, then held the pages like they burned at the edges. She said none of it proved anything. Evidence doesn't argue, it arranges. A car rolled up and parked badly. The varsity jacket stepped out, sunglasses in place, scanning the street like he expected an audience. Tom looked up from the bike and pretended not to notice while his doorbell camera did what it does. The man lingered at the sidewalk. He didn't get an invitation, and he didn't get a scene. By noon, the photos were done. The realtor said Sunday night would be good for a draft. I authorized a 1-day lockbox code and asked her to scrub personal history from the remarks. She nodded and drove off with the afternoon in her trunk. Back at the apartment, I set the guitars on stands, cooked eggs in a quiet pan, and opened a window to let new air learn my name. I updated HR. Emergency contacts changed, spouse access removed, beneficiary updated. The system reflected reality without emotion. Near 4, The bank flagged an attempted password reset from her device. The alert said, "Denied," and the log tucked itself into my records. I scheduled Monday, 9 a.m., filing and notice. Service would meet her at the studio she bragged about. If she wanted an audience, she'd finally have one, just not for the role she imagined. I was parked across from the studio at 8:55, engine off, paperwork breathing in a folder on the passenger seat. Copies lived in 3 places: attorney inbox, safe deposit box, and a drive that didn't sync to anything she could touch. At 8:59, my phone ticked to the hour, and the process server in a Navy windbreaker crossed the street like a commuter who'd done this 1,000 times. He asked the receptionist for Ava by full legal name. She came out in athleisure and stage makeup, phone already angling for a flattering angle. He said he had documents for her. She said there had to be a mistake. He read the line that matters and placed the envelope in her open hand. Filing, notice, inventory, request for temporary occupancy, and the schedule for a preliminary hearing. No drama, just timestamps. She texted 3 words, that I couldn't do this. The law disagreed. Security hovered at a polite distance while she tried to make the moment perform. The camera couldn't help her. It wasn't my scene. I drove away before the door turned opaque again. By 10, the bank executed the last partition. Joint lines closed with a tidy, completed, personal accounts updated, statements rerouted to the mailbox with no living room attached. HR finalized beneficiary changes and removed her access to my health plan. Systems accept endings faster than people. She posted a birthday lament about cruelty and keys. I posted nothing. Silence framed her story better than any rebuttal. Brands in her comments offered hearts. A few sent careful DMs. My attorney forwarded one to me with a note. Perception moves first, then paperwork. At noon, I scheduled the listing to go live Tuesday with neutral language and a lockbox window for agents only. I returned our wedding set by insured mail to her manager's office with a receipt and no line card. Claire called and said I was humiliating her sister. The documents never mentioned humiliation, they mentioned dates. At 2, the varsity jacket. Evan, finally a name, waited outside the studio doors, scanning for a scene. Security kept the lobby still. I kept moving. The day ended with a calendar ping. Hearing set for Friday, 9:30 a.m. She had asked me to disappear. I had, and the echo that followed spelled my last name correctly. By Tuesday night, the house had 12 showings on the calendar, and Ava had 0 keys that worked. The listing looked clean, light, space, potential. No wedding photos, no curated shelf lives. A neighbor DM'd a clip of Evan circling the block like a man late to a party that didn't exist. I saved it to the file that stopped caring about names and kept caring about time. Wednesday belonged to preparation. My attorney walked me through the hearing sequence with the calm of a pilot listing checkpoints. Income statements, bank partitions, inventory photos, the hotel receipt with the sealed phone signature, screenshots of brand posts that turned into public admissions of separate lives. Not cruelty, administration. He said to keep answers lean. I said I had no interest in adjectives. At noon, the listing analytics pinged. High interest, above average saves, 3 offers requested sight unseen. The market doesn't need backstory. It needs measurements. I asked the realtor to hold all responses until after Friday. She agreed, timing is tone. Ava tried another angle. A courier appeared at the apartment door with a handwritten note and a cupcake in a plastic dome. She wrote that we should talk as adults and meet at the coffee shop where we once planned a road trip we never took. The camera caught the delivery, the envelope, the timestamp. I archived it like everything else. Talking had been the most expensive habit in our marriage. I had quit. Claire called from a different number and left a message about fairness. She said I was destroying Ava's reputation. The documents didn't mention reputation. They mentioned assets, occupancy, schedules, a trail of passcodes that finally ended. Evan sent a text from an unknown number pretending at politeness. I didn't reply. Distance isn't anger. It's design. Thursday, HR confirmed my benefits changes and emergency contacts without ceremony. Work stayed steady. Derek asked for a quick update on the compliance project. Jenna slid me a spreadsheet and said it's saying now. Structure has a sound. It helped. Ava posted a long caption about forgiveness under a photo that wasn't current. Comments arrived like blankets thrown over a fire. The heat still hissed. I filed a quiet request to transfer the car title finalized by Monday. The clerk stamped a date and didn't look up. I laid out the suit for Friday. Navy, unsentimental. Shoes shined, papers clipped, pen that worked. I set 2 alarms and backed up the backups. When the night settled, the apartment sounded like a page with nothing printed on it yet. Morning would ink it. Court at 9:30. No speeches. No reruns. Just the final click of a door that had learned my name again. Friday at 9:30, a fluorescent courtroom smelled like paper and old carpet. I sat left of counsel with a folder that didn't tremble. Ava arrived late in a cream blazer, eyes dry, performance ready. Evan paced the hallway like a man auditioning for a role that had already been cast. He didn't get in. The judge asked for sequence, not story. My attorney laid out the timeline like railroad tracks. Paychecks redirected, mailbox established, hotel receipt with phone sealed, lock logs, camera footage, inventory numbers, neighbor affidavit, financial partitions with confirmations. He spoke in clocks, not adjectives. Her counsel said the timeline was aggressive. The judge said the timeline was documented. Tom's statement sat clean in Exhibit D. The doorbell videos played without commentary. No zoom, no voiceover, just a porch, a door, a code, a blink of red. The room listened. The judge granted temporary occupancy to me, instructed both parties to preserve property and refrain from altering shared accounts, and ordered communication through counsel only. No insults, no scenes, no keys passed in parking lots. She stared at the table like the wood might solve something. The gavel didn't dramatize the moment. It just ended it. In the corridor, her attorney said they'd be in touch. Evan stood 3 paces back, sunglasses useless indoors. Ava tried a sentence shaped like apology and defense in one breath. Security cleared the aisle. I pressed the elevator button and stepped into a glass box that showed me as I was. Lighter, exact, done. By afternoon, the listing hit full stride. 3 offers came in above ask. One was cash with a 21-day close and no contingencies. I accepted. The realtor set inspection for Monday. Utilities scheduled to transfer on closing day. The car title cleared. The last auto payment vanished like a trick explained. Saturday, the movers returned for final staging. I left a single envelope on the kitchen counter with forwarding info and a manifest that matched the serial plates. No note. No lecture. The lock blinked once when I pulled it shut, like a metronome finishing a piece. In the apartment, I hung the first real photo in the empty frame, a stretch of coastline from before we met. I ran at dawn until the city steamed and bought calluses back on my fingers playing a guitar that hadn't seen daylight in months. Jenna texted a link to a weekend hike. I said I might go. I changed my number and erased the last synced album. Deletion made no sound, but the room felt cleaner after. Ava posted a caption about growth and grace. The comments tried to turn it into theater. I let them. I didn't disappear. I just stopped being available. Been through it. When they crossed the line, and you made sure they felt it.